Ricky. And then, as I see, the number of the participants is already more than 20. Yeah, thank you very much. So, good afternoon, dear technical working group members and then UNESCAP colleagues, and welcome back after 3 months. Hope you all had a very happy festive season with your loved ones. And as this is our first meeting, I would like to wish you a very happy new year. And I'm really looking forward to having another fruitful and successful year with you all. And again, it's my pleasure to welcome you all to the 15th Technical Working Group meeting today. And I really appreciate you for making the time and joining us today. So before moving to the meeting, I would like to introduce our new vice chair from Indonesia, who's taking role of Ms. Harmavanti Mahiani. It's been a great pleasure to have Ms. Harmavanti, Director of Social Resilience Statistics, to serve as a vice chair of our technical working group on disaster-related statistics for over the past year. And I'm really pleased to share that Ms. Harmavanti has taken a new position in her agency. And on behalf of our members, I would like to express my sincere appreciation to Ms. Harmavanti for her excellent contributions to the technical working group and her commitment to disaster-related statistics, and wish you all the best to her future career and then future endeavor. So, of course, BPS has appointed a new Director of Social Resilience Statistics. Hence, I would like to introduce Ms. Nurma Midayanti, a new Director of Social Resilience Statistics, who continues the role as a technical working group vice chair. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Midayanti and extend your support to her. Ms. Midayanti, I would like to invite you to make a short speech to our members. Floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Nurma Midayanti, but you can call me Nurma. I'm now Director for Social Resilience Statistics that Ariana said before. It's an honor for me join in this technical working group and as a vice chair. I will support Ms. Riwana from Mongolia as a chair, and also with Ms. Sasiti from Fiji, together with all of members to develop disaster-related statistics, especially in Asia Pacific. That is all from me. Now I will leave the rest to the chair to start the agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Nurma, and then thank you for your sweet speech. And then I'm really looking forward to work with you together. Thank you very much. So without any delay, I would like to start today's meeting. And as always, let me recap very briefly what we did in our last meeting in last November. And we had our last workshop in which we had discussion on country-level sectoral agencies' roles and responsibilities, and different coordination platforms, models were identified, and in-country interagency data flows were shared. In terms of roles and responsibilities, many agencies are involved in disaster-related statistics, whereas National Statistical Office in general establishes statistical standards and provides baseline information. And different agencies coordinate through some platforms, platform models such as steering or technical committee or interagency working and data management center, and etc. To facilitate data flows, some arrangements to harmonize and standardize data are needed to provide basis for communication and common understanding among agencies. That was a very brief recap from our previous session. So with that, I would like to move to our first session. In this session, our colleagues from UNCAP and UNDRR Bonn office will share some updates on e-learning on disaster-related statistical framework and the progress in the development of internationally agreed standards related to disaster statistics. So each speaker has 5 minutes, and then after their presentations, of course, I will run Q&A session. With your permission, let me firstly invite Mr. Sokol Bako, lecturer of UNCAP. Mr. Bako, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. It's a pleasure to be with you in this first meeting of the year of the Technical Working Group. I hope everybody is doing well. You and your families are in good health. As the chair mentioned, we will start with a quick update of the e-learning course that all of you are aware of and contributed to as it was developed earlier in the year in 2021. So if we can move on to the next slide, please. Very good. So as you know, the e-learning course, which was based on the DRSF, was put together in early 2021. We had a facilitated version of the course that was very successful. Over 100 participants from the region completed that course, the final exam, and after we finished the facilitated version of the course, we made that available into our e-learning platform as a self-paced course. It is available right now as well. We do plan to run the course again as a facilitated course sometime this year, depending on demand and some other activities that we have here at CIAP. But obviously, this is a topic of high demand and relevance, so we will continue to train new staff and expand the group of people that is exposed to these materials. As we discussed last year as well, you'll remember that we went from a regional approach to try to scale it down to a national level approach, and we had a very successful implementation of the national level training in Indonesia. The e-learning material was translated into Bahasa Indonesia by our friend Puji Pujiono. So that was available to colleagues in Indonesia to read in their language. We had a very good collaboration in this process with colleagues from a university there that is very keen to work in this area. So we ran that course sometime during the summer last year again, and it allowed us to reach a different sort of audience besides the government folks by working closely with the academic institution to also reach colleagues that are doing some of the more cutting edge research in this area, and bringing together the official statistics community with the academic community to get better outcomes for the production of official statistics in this space. We have also started to work on translating the material in Thai, and that work actually is almost finished. I would like to thank colleagues at the Thai National Statistical Office, as well as the office that manages disasters there in Thailand, for their support as we have gone through this process, and we hope to launch the facilitated version of the course for our colleagues in Thailand, hopefully sometime during this first half of the year. As you might recall from our prior conversations, we here at CIAP and ESCAP more broadly are very keen to support you if you think that this training would be useful in your country context. Do not hesitate to reach out to us, and we can see how we can support you with national level training based on the DRSF and more. It's not just about the e-learning. Obviously, we bring in lecturers, and there are multiple components to this And this is something that was done very well in the Indonesia course, where Puji and other colleagues from BPS and other agencies came together to provide lectures to course participants to expand the knowledge and build upon the e-learning. Next slide, please. Now, we also have expanded the training to other languages, or it has been translated to other languages as well. It's available in Russian as well as Arabic. So I don't know if anybody here is a speaker of those languages, but that's available as well to expand the reach of it. Bahasa in Indonesian, as I mentioned, again, it is available as a self-paced course. And last but not least, we are working with colleagues to have the French and Spanish version to be completed by, as I said, towards the end of March at the latest. I think by making the course available in all these languages, it allows us to obviously reach a broader audience. I know here the focus is obviously in the Asia Pacific region, but with the work that's ongoing at the global level, to get a new framework in place that elevates the work that we are doing and makes it more global. Hopefully, all these different versions of the translated course will make it easier for people to familiarize themselves with some of the core concepts of the DRSF. That is it from my side again. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And as always, happy to answer any questions or take on board any comments that colleagues might have as far as the activities of CEAP are concerned in this space. Back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bako, for your brief updates on this e-learning platform. And then it's really, I'm really pleased to know that there are many languages available, so our members can use it wisely. And then thanks our advisor Puji for playing an important role for translating the course in Bahasa Indonesia. And then hopefully our Thai friends also will use it in Thai language later this year. And then if the countries, our member countries, are interested in that, please contact with Mr. Bako in order to translate this. And I can see Ricky. Do you have a question?
Yes, thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you, Sokol, for all your work on this and for giving everyone an update. Now, the work that we are doing here to translate the course, to make it available, it's all, of course, about getting the course out there for more use. And as Sokol also mentioned, well, globally as well as within this region. And one of the things that crossed my mind a few times is the possibility of including this online course as part of some of the many trainings that UNDRR is actually organizing around the Sendai Framework Monitor. So I just wanted to put this on the table because I know that we have a few people participating in the meeting today from UNDRR, both their Bonn office, which is the monitoring office, as well as their regional office in Bangkok. So I'm just putting this idea on the table, and maybe we can discuss more. That was my first, which is more a suggestion than a question. My other point is that I had the opportunity to speak with a group of people in the Maldives Bureau of Statistics just earlier today. And I'm not sure any of them are with us right now, but I think we have a possible expression of interest for national workshops. Oh, I see now Shasna from Maldives Bureau of Statistics is raising her hand, so I'll shut up. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ricky, for bringing important notes or comments in the table. Ms. Shazna, floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. And thank you very much, Ricky, for highlighting this. Actually, yeah, we did talk to you and ESCAP regarding the e-learning as well as training, building capacity on this area. as we have established in our structure as well, the environment component separately, and we need to build the capacity within the NSO as well as the national statistical system. So really, I think it would be very beneficial for us to implement this national training. And I would like to ask Sokol on this component, whether if we are to implement this training in the Maldives, will it be, I mean, customized for our kind of disasters? I mean, using examples which are based here, and if for the translation purposes, it's fine for us because English is our second language, and most of the agencies say it's fine. So that won't be a problem. But regarding the customization based on the concepts used in, I mean, for disasters, it's different, right, for island-based country and the other countries. So how can this be just accommodated into the national training? I just wanted to ask. So cool. Thank you.
Yes, thank you both to our colleagues from Maldives and Enrique as well. Just quickly on the question of customization, as part of national training, obviously we have a number of learning activities, and the e-learning course is one component of the training. I think the regular webinars and other interactions that we would have would give us an opportunity to bring to the fore some of the issues that are country specific in this case. So there is very much an opportunity to not only showcase some of these issues that are relevant to your country, but also bring together expertise from maybe other institutions in your countries as well, to allow us to have a little bit more of an exchange of ideas as well between the statistics office, disaster management, and other relevant institutions as well. So there is very much an opportunity to customize this. And I think some of the additional activities, learning activities that we put together as part of the course would be a good place to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. I can see Iria. Iria, do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks to Ricky for your comment and suggestion. I'm Iria from UNDRR Regional Office for Asia Pacific, and I'm very happy to see the interest from the Maldives Bureau of Statistics. We are currently working with the NDMA Maldives, and we're about to hire a national technical assistants to work with them for 9 months to strengthen disaster loss data and disaster loss accounting and support them on the Sendai framework monitoring. As part of that consultancy is planned also to have several occasions of training and capacity development and workshops with other ministries. And I have even invited them to join this group and this meeting. Maybe they weren't available today, but I think we're very happy to discuss with ESCAP colleagues how we can also integrate the training and support on the disaster-related statistic framework and that support. And just for information for the Maldives colleagues, actually, the National Technical Assistant is an epidemiologist coming from the Maldives University. So it also brings this other aspect of sectorial expertise on public health. And we will be very, very happy to work together with you and DMA and ESCAP colleagues. Thank you. Over.
Thank you, Iria. And then thank you for those who asked questions or made the comments. So next, I would like to invite Rahul Sengupta, Interagency and Expert Group on Disaster-Related Statistics Secretariat and Program Management Officer at the UNDRR Bonn office. Ms. Sengupta, floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'll keep my presentation short for a time of 5 minutes. So my presentation will focus on the updates on the progress of the development of the internationally agreed standards, which we are usually calling the Common Standards for Disaster-Related Statistics.
Sorry, you are muted.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now? That was strange. I
Yes,
unmuted
we can
myself.
hear. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you, sir, for that. So just to give you a very short background, as you know, disaster relief statistics is primarily feeding into the national, regional, and local risk assessments. It feeds into the post-disaster assessments as also in response and civil protection. This is all in the overall framework of the SDGs, the Sendai framework, and the Paris Agreement. And as we all know, we are all here mostly from the disaster management agencies who are responsible for disaster risk reduction in the countries, and from the national statistical organizations who and other organizations that are responsible for official sources of data. Moving on.
Rahul, we are not seeing your slides in case you are trying to share slides.
Yes, I am. Oh, sorry, it is. Can you see my slides now?
Yes, now we can see that. Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So, yeah, I mean, I was just, okay, I just repeat it very quickly. So disaster risk statistics, as we know, are work looking into national, local, and risk assessments, post-disaster assessments, and disaster response and civil protection. This is under the overall international frameworks of SDGs, the Sendai framework, and the Paris Agreement. And we are here, all here from the disaster management agencies and national statistical organizations. So very quickly on the interagency expert group, just to give you a timeline. So this all started in March 2018 with the Union Statistical Commission, which included disaster statistics in its decision. Thereafter, in March 2019, it requested for the establishment of a global group and a network for disaster statistics. Thereafter, in March 2019, a small core group was set up with DESA and all the regional commissions of the 5 regions and UNDRR. That was co-chaired with the co-chair being ESCAP and UNDRR. Thereafter, we had the over a period of time, there was a consultation to develop the terms of reference for the interagency expert group, which were developed and which was approved by the Bureau of Statistical Commission in October 2020. Then in February 21, there was a call for, in the process, there was a call for a membership from all the countries and international organizations. And this was both from the national statistical organizations and the disaster risk reduction organizations who send in their nominations. And this, the IAG, the larger IAG, was constituted by February 2021. In March, this was reported to the UN Statistical Commission. And thereafter, we had the first meeting of the IAG in May, and this was in line with the March 2019 request for the establishment of the formal group. And then as was mentioned, the network. For the network, the first forum of producers and users of disaster statistics was held. Sorry. Held in June 2021. Thereafter, a number of experts were identified for a few topics, and I'll go into them thereafter, which basically came out from the deliberations of the first meeting of the IAG and the forum and the first forum of producers and users. And this is my last slide to tell you where we are and how we are moving forward. So basically, based on the deliberations in the IEG meeting in May and the first forum in June, a number of topics emerged as the important for the research agenda for the IEG. Out of these, so from the consultations, a prioritization was undertaken, and 3 topics were seen as important where more in-depth study could be undertaken. These were economic losses attributed to disasters, disaster risk reduction expenditure for satellite accounting, and environmental and ecosystem related losses. These three were the you can say the top three that came out from the discussions. So based on that, experts identified who could help in the development of the structure of the common framework for disaster risk statistics. That's one. And then followed by experts on each of these three topics. In particular, OECD also supported us, and one of their expert colleagues who has actually worked earlier in UNESCAP with Ricky and colleagues is also joined these experts to work on particular the economic losses. So what we are expecting now is in March, we will have the draft for all these documents, which will be circulated. First, the core group members, we will have the leads from the core group members for each of these topics. And these documents will be circulated among the IAG members, where the country representatives will get an opportunity to review them, and they could review 1, 2, or 3, all of them, and provide their inputs to the respective technical leads who will be from the core group, and they will provide that the feedback there. But then, of course, it will be an iterative process, and then we have a larger meeting for the next IAG, which will be, we are proposing around August or September. This is still to be confirmed, but this will be basically the follow-up to the first meeting that happened in May of 2021. Around the same time, we are trying to see if we can go do it back to back, but around the same time, we will also have the second forum from the Forum of Producers and Users of Disaster Statistics. This forum will be hosted by the UNESCAP. Last year it was by UNEC, and this year UNESCAP has kindly volunteered to host this event, and this will happen and take place in August, September. In all these meetings and the forums, these documents, the common statistical, the common framework disaster statistics, and the issue papers will of course be deliberated upon. Based on that, based on the feedbacks received, those will be consolidated and then reviewed. Of course, in all of these, the member states who are part of the IAG, the member state representatives who are part of the IAG, and this is, we are talking about 90 countries, around 90 countries from where nominations, we have received nominations for members. They will be giving their inputs, and based on that, the document will be updated, and this will form the part of the report that will be submitted to the next UN Statistical Commission, which is the 54th Commission session in March 2023. But for that, the submission for the documents is by November. That's where we will make the submission to the Commission through the Bureau. That's the more or less the timeline that we have for 2022. If you have any specific questions on this process, I'm most welcome to I'll ask, and I'll cover that. But more or less, that's the process we have here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rahul, for your updates, and then brief introduction about the formulation of this interagency of expert group, and then updates on work on the development of the standards on disaster-related statistics and coming meetings and forums. Thank you very much. So now I would like to open the floor for questions or comments. If you have any questions or comments, please raise your hand or use a chat box. Ricky, yes, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'll try to be brief. I know we are not quite sticking to schedule there, but I want to thank Rahul from the Secretariat of the Interagency and Expert Group, because Rahul is actually pulling most of the weight by himself for this group, with supported to some extent by the co-chairs of this group, which is myself, as well as Rahul's supervisor. So he really deserves a lot of praise. I wanted to add also that the work that's technically going on in this group right now Some of you who've been involved for a while will recognize the issues that are highlighted for the technical work that's going on right now, that these are the issues that were pointed out by the Asia Pacific expert group developing the disaster-related statistics framework. So it's another very good hint at the recognition that the work in this region has received from the rest of the world. I'll also mention a fourth thing if we look at sort of the technical pillars upon which this framework needs to rest. A fourth part is the need for a globally agreed classification of hazards. And that is a point that features in the agenda of our meeting today a little bit later on. But agreeing how we classify and describe disasters is, of course, foundational for being able to have globally comparable statistics in this area. So it's a very important part. And finally, I want to also mention that, well, at the moment, this group is co-chaired by UNDRR and ESCAP, but the chairing is going to rotate this year. And that means that we will be looking for another international agency and a member state who might be interested in co-chairing this group. So I just want to put it on the table for any of you who might, you know, have this as an ambition going forward, but we'll be a little more specific in probably within the next 2 months or so. But I just wanted to get the thinking started right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricky, for this additional information. Those who are interested to join this group, please contact Rahul or Ricky on that matter. So thank you, Rahul, and then thank you, Sokol. I don't see anyone raise their hands, so thank you very much for joining us today. So now I would like to move to our next part, and I would like to invite Ricky again to moderate our next session. Miss Ricky, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ariuna. And yes, I've been warming up a little bit here. But well, as our chair rightly mentioned, this is our first meeting of this year, and that means it's a very good opportunity to take stock of what has happened so far and what are our priorities going forward. And to help us all in that reflection, we designed and administered a bit of a survey among all of you, and some of you have responded. Not all of you have responded yet. But what we have basically been asking is, well, what has worked, what has not worked so far? So a little bit of a backward-looking part of a very simple questionnaire for feedback, and then also a forward-looking part in terms of, well, what is it we should prioritize going forward? And my colleague Paul and my colleague and friend Pucci have been putting together the preliminary results from this feedback survey, and I'll now hand it over to Pucci to take us through this. And as Pucci speaks, can I ask all of you to think as he speaks, you know, what are your thoughts on both how should we work together and what should we be focusing on? And it's perfectly fine to put your personal views and preferences forward. During this meeting, we will also be opening up the questionnaire so that those of you who haven't had a chance to respond can still do so, and we'll then compile a final version a little bit further down the line. But for now, the preliminary results, the floor is yours, Pucci.
Thank you, Ricky. Madam Chair, thank you for inviting me for this meeting. As Ricky was saying, that it is part of our effort to make the technical working group really of service to what you all try to achieve. That is by introducing, promoting, implementing disaster-related statistics. Throughout the year, this technical working group have been inviting countries to share experience, to bring emerging good practices, to bring policies and discourses, and so on. We met every week, no, every month for the last year. And this is the thing that we have learned together in the form of this a quick study. Kunpor, next one, please. And as Rike said, at the end of the presentation, you could still join the survey and get your views in it. First, we feel that we have created and sustained a regional momentum on disaster statistics. I think we gladly note that compared to other regions in the world, Asia Pacific has dive into disaster statistics, even nobody has started the conversation, I suppose, and we sustain it. All right, we have 18 country experience sharing, diligently on disaster-related statistics. Colleagues from Indonesia, Iran, Myanmar, to Mongolia and Maldives, everybody shared. Not necessarily the solution, but the challenges that they are facing. Some are creating innovative, different way of doing it. But by and large, we all confirm that disaster statistics has been needed, right? And there are guest speakers from the global, from other regional outfit, UN agencies have been invited. And yours truly, myself, has been facilitating the process, ups and downs together with you to this point. And we have been working using the Confluence as a platform. Not everybody is familiar, although we try to push you as hard as we can to use Confluence as a way of working together. But maybe, as it is mentioned in the 5-year plan, we will have to improve the way we work through the Confluence. Next slide, please. Another accomplishment for the last year has been on the basis of the sharing and study, we have put together a regional situational report in which using questions pertaining to production, sharing, and utilization of disaster statistics in several countries, we have the image, a snapshot, if you like, of how our countries compared to the others. Now, mind you that this study was conducted on the basis of these questions and literature studies and interview rather than the actual extensive studies. But nevertheless, it's a good springboard to trigger our conversation. Next one, please. The third accomplishment and activities that we have is the country studies, which is a deeper look at each country's endeavor towards establishing a disaster-related statistics. Bangladesh, as you know from their sharing and from the study, they've been very diligent to undertake the countrywide survey on disasters and so on. Bhutan, Fiji, Georgia, Indonesia, and Sri Lanka, this gives you a sense of how each of these countries arrive at different progress, facing different challenges on disaster-related statistics. And yet it confirms that disaster statistics is needed, but the route to there seems to be different, by and large determined by the overall statistical system in the country, but also the posture of disaster risk management in the country and how the two are interact. Next. Another one is the regional landscape, right? In general, throughout the year, as it was said earlier, that there has been our collective impression that disaster-related statistics is important, right? It gains prominence increasingly. There are practical requirements to produce with this. As the country are more aware and more attuned to disaster risk reduction, your leaders start asking for numbers and statistics, right? So that making it more important even. However, each and every country, both from the case studies and regional situational analysis, seems to be implementing different things, right? Usually, it is response-oriented data, The data are dispersed in different agencies, and there is yet a common definition, classification, and standard as we left the year 2021. Okay. Number 3 is that clearly the development of the DRSF is inseparable from the issues that relate to the national statistical systems. Some of your statistical system already embedded disaster damage and losses, as our colleague from UNDRR was mentioning earlier, that some issues on disaster statistics are similar to that of other sectors and so on, right? Number 4, despite the fact that we meet every month for the last 16 months, right? We seem to have different level of understanding of what disaster-related statistic is compared to emergency statistic, for example, right? We also have the needs for a model, because until now, we haven't seen any one single DRSF that is worthy to be a model. There are emerging, like in Indonesia, in the Philippines and others, but these are not yet a model as such. So maybe the year forward will be like that. And number 6, and confirmation and affirmation that this technical working group has been very useful for us to continue talking, all right, to develop our capacities and to share experience both internally among ourselves as well as with colleagues from other region and globally. Next one, please. Some of the substantive deliberation that we have gone through over the years has been, as mentioned already, a country case study on DRSF implementation, particularly in Indonesia. And Ibu Hermawanti was very active to present both in this TWG as well as at the Global Site event and what's not, right? We conducted one Stats Cafe to talk about the disaster-related statistic around mid-April last year. We also collectively developed a strategic plan for 5 years, whether it will be flashed a bit later. Our colleagues, included from Secretariat, participated in a first expert group meeting on users and producers of DRSF around mid-June last year. And then we conducted with Indonesia a regional symposium on DRSF at the end of July, which is an interesting conversation in itself. And we have organized 3 workshops. The one that talk about the, towards the end of the year, we sort of have enough of the country sharing. So we decided, I think we need to talk about the issues. So we tackle first 3 issues, okay? One, the fact that many of you said one of the problems is that there is no enough or there is no political impetus to kick DRSF. Yes, we understand DRSF, but our leaders do not call for it. That seems to be a challenge. So we discussed that on the first workshop. Number 2, we tackled what is the content of DRSF. We know what it is in general, but what's in it? When we talk about risk statistics, occurrence statistic, what's in it? That's the second workshop. And the third one is the business process. The fact that disaster statistics involves so many agencies. So in that workshop, we try to make boxes and arrows and circles and try to see how that move from one point to another in different countries differently. So these are 3 substantive workshops that we did. Thank you. Next. So this is the 5-year strategic plan. It's in a small print and you cannot read it, but you can see it in the confluence, all right? It was built in 3 areas, colleagues, and for the next 5 years, which is 4 from now onward. I have to see the end of this strategic plan, 4 years from now. One area is to strengthen our own technical capacity. All right, the members of TWG. We need to be conversant about the DRSF and understand. Number 2 is to look at Asia Pacific, our technical working group, as an active contributor to the global effort that Rahul was talking about. Knowing that half of the disasters happen in Asia Pacific, our countries disproportionately suffer from statistics, so it's only proper that we become an active part of that process. And the third one is the actual support to build statistics in your countries. right? So this is the 3 areas. And then on the right side, what you see, colleagues, is the incremental and progressing objectives and activities from the present status of last year and the target of 2025 and how it's broken down year by year. I will not go to detail, otherwise the meeting will be finished tomorrow morning. So I will skip that. And you read at the conference and we can discuss some more. But Rike and Madam Chair, maybe in the next meeting, we could really talk, how we schedule our work to tackle the strategic plan in terms of activities. Yeah. Next. The way forward to 22, perhaps I could pass this on to you, Rike. I've done the part on looking back. Now looking forward is given to the younger one. So Rike, it's your turn.
Pucci, can I ask you to continue, because I haven't had a look at this presentation before the meeting. So I'll pick up and moderate the discussion once you are through with the slides.
Okay, all right. Then now on that basis, and colleague, let me continue then. Let me become the younger one as well. We have looked back. Now we look forward. What will be next? Next one, please. The first one is with regard to your feedback, colleague. You have given feedback to us on which part of the 5-year plan is already organized in objectives and priorities. But we ask you still again, which one you think are most important? And this is what it looks like, right? There are options of activities that you think are important as the first choice, right? You look at the left side here. For example, agreeing on priorities for technical capacity enhancement. So you see the need for us to agree what it is that need to be enhanced and how, and so on. So these are the list of the priorities among the 5-year plan that you think as priorities, right? I will not go to detail again about this. It's already in the confluence, but we can discuss even further. Next one. The evaluation of the previous technical working group meetings, we ask you also feedback, right? This is like a good company asking for our products and services. What do you think? Do you like it or not, right? One is about the profile of the participants. We ask you what's the relevance. Kunpo, do we have the detail of this in front, or should I just highlight it here? Could you check what the next slide is?
It should be on the next slide.
Yes, please. Okay.
Thank you.
So go to the next slide. In terms of profile, right, colleagues, that most of our participants are from government, right? So that highlight how important it is in terms of translating policies, because our governments have signed up in the Sendai framework and also endorsed ESCAP resolution on improving disaster risk management, including through statistics. That's a leadership decision. And our job as managers and technical people are implemented. So obviously, most of participants are from government, which is good, but complemented by the presence of colleagues from the academic institution. I see that my colleague from Aceh, for example, from university, who undertake the national e-learning course with SIAP. That's a valuable contribution. Also colleagues from NGOs, from the UN and NGOs. So this is the profile of the participants who fill in the feedback. Next. When we ask you how the technical working group meetings relevant to you, you said that the issues are relevant, most importantly. Okay. Number 2, that the issues are connected to your work. No wonder that you are interested, because you are working either in statistics or disasters, right? From time to time, we have visitors from the economic sector, but not very often, mostly disaster and statistics. And that issue of genders are being discussed as a concept and so on, right? So that's the highlight of your feedback regarding TWG meetings. Next. Number 3, we asked you for feedback regarding the effectiveness, right? You said that the time was more or less okay. Initially, we have only 1 hour. Now we have 90 minutes. And if not enough, we'll make it 3 hours. I hope not. But do you think that the time was used efficiently? There hardly any time is missing. And our chair has been very, very skillful, Aruna, in running this. Secretariat has been efficient, so I think it was good. The facilitators engage the participants when required and necessary. We have a group discussion, breakout rooms, and so on. The meetings achieve its objectives. Most of you agree, right? And the presentation and documents were of high quality and concise and clear, right? So generally, these are your feedback to us. Next. The efficiency of the meetings, the virtual tool. Hello? Okay. Let me just continue. The virtual tool was easy to use. I mean, it's not easy to introduce Confluence, but we use, what did you use, okay? Mentimeter, right? We use the Confluence, we use the whatever, to make sure that our communication is running throughout the meeting. The duration of the virtual meetings are appropriate. These are quite spread. Many of you think it's true. The others said, okay. The interactive tools, Q&A and so on, were used effectively. Most of you agree to that. And sufficient guidance are provided by Secretariat on how to use the virtual tools. And then technical support from ESCAP is available. Kunpor is always there to get your presentation, to present it. Never miss any presentation. So I think you think that was a part of the efficiency. Next. So colleagues, we will end here, but before we get rid of this slide, you can take out your mobile phone. You can scan this QR, right? And you can fill up the questionnaire if you have not. And by next meeting, we'll see if there's a change, and then we can present it to you again. But in general, Rike, I would like to report to you that in general, participants who are mostly coming from government feel that this TWG has been useful for them to understand, to try to push the agenda of the DRSF. And it has been useful for them to learn from one each other and for them to get new knowledge and rely on some of the information required to push the DRSF further. Rike, over to you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Puji, for the excellent presentation, and thanks also to Kunpor, who's been putting a lot of the information into it. I fully agree with you, Puji, on your reflection that the feedback is positive, and we can also see that the respondents are primarily from government agencies, which is exactly the kind of inputs that is really needed to make sure that this technical working group continues to meet the needs of countries and especially government institutions in the region. It was with that purpose, indeed, it was established. Now, as Puji mentioned, we have 21 respondents so far, and we really would like more. So do go to the survey, scan the QR or use the link, and send us your feedback. This is a very simple questionnaire. It's not going to take you long to respond. And what we will then do is to make sure that we set aside more time for discussion of the final results and have that as the basis for planning our work for this year. And I think that main discussion, given that it's already in Bangkok now, 3 o'clock, so we're already 1 hour into our meeting today. So we will have to continue this discussion during the next meeting. But I would very much like to hear from any of you. You've seen an excellent overview of what was the intent of this working group, what was also the intended sort of progression in each of the main streams of work of the working group. And one thing I could see is that what we put together in terms of progression for more documentation, for example, of examples, was one of the topics that actually received the lowest priority when I look at the feedback from you. So this is the kind of feedback that's really useful, because it will allow us to make sure that we continue to focus on things that support you in your work to improve disaster-related statistics, and support you also in the part of the journey where you are at right now. I also note that the top priorities from the responses we have so far are very much on the technical knowledge work stream that we have outlined. And this is something I would like to also just have confirmed by more respondents, because this could lead us to actually shift some of the focus of the work and the resources that we have. And I now see we have a comment. It's so wonderful. Someone is raising their hand. Vasiti, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Ricky, and thank you, Puji Mbulavanaka from Fiji. Apologies, I just also joined in a bit late. I'm not too sure whether this has been covered or is it in the pipeline, but if we could also consider looking at the applications or the software, the disaster statistics softwares that can be shared or used with developing countries. I believe some of the applications are different for different countries, but if we could explore where options are available, where country members can draw applications or softwares where we can also use for disaster analysis. I just wanted to raise that. Given the cost to buy one is very expensive, if we could consider that as part of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vasiti. And this is, I mean, I'm taking note. So this is definitely something we can look into and see if that could be part of the experience and information sharing in this group. This is also where I think it's important that we are making sure what we are talking about. And I'm speaking a little bit as I'm thinking right now, because we can look at software that relates to databases. We can look at software that relates to data exchange. And then we can look specifically for analytical software, which may be more in the area of the analysis where we would want statistics to come into play, which means beyond disaster information per se. But this is something we can definitely discuss more. Well, so far the note is there, so it will be part of our summary when we look at feedback and discuss more on elements that could be picked up by this technical working group during the course of this year. So thank you so much, Vasiti, for that comment. I see Rahul has his hand up. Rahul, please.
Thank you so much, Ricky. I just wanted to comment, give a short feedback on this specific question about the software and databases. So as you would know, we have the disaster loss accounting system called DISINVENTAR across the world, and a number of countries, including the Pacific countries, especially SPC, and about 20 of the Pacific countries have this database which can be used. And just wanted to mention that this has been there for about 25 years, and a new system based on this is being developed over the next 1 year. And in 2023, we will be launching and basically piloting it in a number of countries. And this could be a good opportunity for countries to try this out. Just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Thank you. And I see Vasiti, do you want to come in again?
Yes, I just wanted to add a comment on what Rahul had mentioned, the DISINVENTAR. I think it's also important for the technical working group to see that applications such as DISINVENTAR or anything that we implement, that it is sustainable in the sense that here in Fiji, I know DISINVENTAR is there, but it is not updated. So if we could come up with processes on how we, if we continue to use Desinventor, or should we move to another application? There has to be a sustainability element to ensure that the data are not obsolete, that it continues to be updated as disaster evolves. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vasiti. And I see that Rahul is nodding and taking notes. So this is one for UNDRR, but it's good to hear that the this inventor is being updated and a new system is being developed. At least I have had my questions and doubts related to this inventor for several years, but I'm not going to, let's not make this into a disinventor meeting. But what I want to mention is that having a disaster database and producing disaster related statistics are two very different things. And so I just want to make sure that we keep our minds focused for this technical working group, that it is disaster related statistics we are focusing on. And it is to make sure that we keep a scope that's manageable so that this technical working group can actually progress. Because we are not in the business of taking over sort of or scoping everything that has to do with data that's necessary for disaster management. We are looking at disaster-related statistics as something that can add value to disaster data. So I just wanted to make this clear, because we are indeed having a group, which is the good thing about this group, that we have both disaster experts and statisticians together. But the focus of this group is where those two professional communities come together and need to work together. So just wanted to make this point, and raising the question of software was an excellent opportunity for me to highlight this. So thank you very much, Vasiti. And we've the notes have been taken both at UNDRR in Bonn, which is great, but certainly also as a note to include this in our discussion on the further work on this technical working group. So thank you very much. Do we have other comments for this particular topic right now? As I mentioned, we will pick it up again once we have the final responses to the survey questionnaire in. I would just like to try out that you all know how to raise your electronic hands. Can I see how many of the people who are participating in the call today have actually responded already to the questionnaire? So those of you who have responded, could you please raise your electronic hand now? Okay. Thank you, Pucci. Thank you, Ariona. Thank you, Saiful. And thank you, Tanele Chimi, for you, because you have all responded to the questionnaire. And that also tells me that we have a lot of room for increasing the response rate to this questionnaire. So please, all of you who are not raising your hand right now, please go to the survey and send in the response so that we can further enrich also our discussion. What we will do at the Secretariat before our next meeting is to have a good look again and collect the additional responses and use that for what I would say is going to be something like a draft plan for our work during this year, so that we can base our discussion at the next meeting on a draft plan which clearly reflects the feedback you guys are coming with. So you can lower your hands again. Good. Thank you so much. And thank you again, Pucci, for taking us through this. That was very helpful. And Ms. Aryuna, Madam Chair, sorry, we are running late, and it is time, I believe, to hand it back to you to further chair, unless we have Mr. Husset. Do you want to take the floor because your hand is still raised? No, it's not the case. So back to you, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Pooja, and then thank you, Ricky, for introducing our work and then giving the marks for our activities. And then, as Pooja said, that we learned a lot, we talked a lot, and then now it's time to move, make our hands dirty. So also thank you, Ricky, for your crystal clear explanation about our role. And then hopefully our members get the idea. So thank you. Let me move to our next session. It will be moderated by Ms. Iria from UNDRR, Regional Office for Asia and the Pacific. So Iria, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. So it's my pleasure to introduce you to our next presenter, who is Ms. Kansa Ahmed. Ms. Kansa is a consultant in global health in the Global Disaster Risk Reduction and Global Health Security teams at the newly formed UK Health Security Agency, which was previously known as the Public Health England. And Kansa is currently leading the disaster-related statistic pilot on behalf of the Interagency Expert Group Task Force on Measuring Hazardous Events and Disasters. She was also part of the team responsible for leading the delivery of the recently published UNDRR International Science Council Hazard Definition and Classification Supplement. And Ms. Kansa will be sharing with us on the process on the statistical review for these hazard information profiles and the opportunities for engagement from Asia Pacific. So with that, I'd like to introduce Kansa, and Kansa, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Arya, and many thanks, Madam Chair, and to everybody else for inviting myself and my colleague Fahad Malik to join you today. It is certainly an honour. Whilst it's an early start, I think it's the best start I could have had on a Wednesday morning to spend it with you. So thank you very much. So good afternoon, everybody. And I just want to quickly run through the presentation and explain a bit about what it is that we're trying to do around disaster-related statistics. Whilst the work we're doing is primarily led by UNEC and the UK Health Security Agency, this project is actually, a pilot project is actually a global project. So we want to open up to as many people as possible and explain a bit more about how colleagues in Asia Pacific can also get involved. So on the next slide, so before we sort of go into the details, I want to go into the background. So where has this pilot originated from? What is it we are trying to achieve? So the Sendai framework is the foundation for what we're trying to deliver. And the Sendai framework essentially told us all that we should take an all hazards approach to disaster management. And of course, that makes obvious sense. But then there was a very sensible question that came back that said, is everybody defining the word all hazards the same way? What do we mean by a hazard? And so the hazard definition and classification review was that first step towards developing a definition of hazards. And what that review did was it sort of worked in conjunction with experts across the UN, academia, science, excuse me, and the private sector to develop a list of 302 hazards, which are spread across different categories such as technological, geohazards, chemical, etc. And the idea was to begin that process. But once we had that list, what we needed to do was develop what we call hazard information profiles. And these are like 2-page definitions. So if you want to talk about, for example, cholera, what is the definition of cholera? What does that mean? And what statistics and metrics already exist? Or if we're talking about flooding, how do we define flooding? what metrics exist, and where are the gaps. And that's really important, because the key thing around disaster-related statistics is we have to make sure we're all using the same language, the same ontology. So we have to kind of ensure if we're going to develop good statistics that we have the good definition to begin with. So this supplement was published in October last year, and we're sort of trying to promote it across colleagues so we have a standard ontology across global colleagues. All of this work is underpinned by the Sustainable Development Goals, the Paris Agreement, and the International Health Regulations. So we're making sure that it links in with the existing definitions, not necessarily creating new definitions. So the next step is actually now to look at sort of what we're going to do with this. So on the next slide, so how the hazard information profile is going to be used. So my colleague Fahad has just put into the chat a link to the hazard information profile document. It is about over 800 pages, but it's like an encyclopedia. You click to the hazard that's relevant to you and you look at the definition. So how can countries, how can colleagues in disaster-related statistics and disaster management use hazard information profiles? Well, first of all, what it does is they create understanding. You need to ensure that everybody understands what we mean when we say flood, when we say hoarfrost, all of those things. Once you have good understanding, it enables development of good policy, because we know then everybody's referring to the same definition. And once we have a good policy in place, it helps to attract funding. So if you have all of those three things in place, that is really helpful towards getting to good disaster risk management and prevention and response. Over to the next slide. Yeah, so disaster-related statistics, I mean, I'm talking to the converted here. All of us here are signed up to the UN Statistical Commission sort of definition of why it's important that we have disaster-related statistics. We've already discussed it, and, you know, Rahul sort of helpfully gave an introduction earlier around, you know, the need for better data, the need for better statistical management, because ultimately, if we have good statistics, we will understand disaster risk reduction better, we will understand the baseline, and we'll understand whether our interventions are actually making a difference. So, okay, I have the next slide, please. Yeah, thanks. So this leads us to the disaster-related statistics pilot. So the background for this actual pilot is based on the hazard information profiles. Because the hazard information profiles now provide a common academic and scientific definition, and they're underpinned by the Sendai framework and SDGs and the Paris Agreement for climate change, it was felt that actually it'd be good for the governments and the national statistical offices to review the classification and actually check whether statistical definitions can be produced from the academic definitions. So if you have an academic definition of a flood or a scientific definition of flood, can we also then develop the statistical definition so we know then how to measure that hazard? This is really important because what our colleagues in disaster management and national statistical offices can do is they can provide input into amending those definitions. So these definitions that are produced in that big sort of document, they're not set in stone, they're dynamic. As colleagues start to input and say, well, actually, you need to change this definition so we can measure this, that process will happen. And there's a 3-year cycle that's been put in place by the chair of the working group, Professor Virginia Murray, to enable us to identify gaps and shortcomings, and so that actually we can begin to implement them and have a good classification system within the statistical community. So, excuse me, how are we going to do this? On the next slide, if it's changing, yeah. So the objective is effectively, if this pilot is that we want to provide feedback from a statistical point of view of the applicability of hazard information profiles. There is no point having this big document with all these definitions if they're not usable. And what we want to find out from colleagues is, can they be used and are they useful? And it's going to be really important then to use these as a fundamental basis for developing any practical implementation guidelines. So how are we going to do this? And on the next slide should be outlining the process, the methodology. Now, the task force's statistical review is sort of a project team that includes myself, Michael Nagy from UNECE, and Daniel from OECD. But effectively, we oversee the project with the support of colleagues from UKHSA. Whilst we are based in Europe, it is not a European project. It's not a UNECE project. It is a global project on behalf of the interagency expert group. So we are keen to get as many people as possible involved. And so there are three sort of arms to this project. First one is that we're doing a systematic review by experts. So we have sent out sort of online questionnaires. We've sent out a doodle poll, and next week we are going to be hosting the focus groups with experts. We would very much like colleagues on this call to get involved, and we will share the link to the doodle poll so you can let us know which of the expert meetings you would like to attend, and Fahad will have put that in the chat now, because we want to get as many diverse opinions as possible. We also have a questionnaire, an online survey that we sort of sent out in January across all colleagues, and hopefully that was forwarded to colleagues on this call. But again, we've got the link to the survey in the chat if you want to provide your opinion. The second part of the pilot is what we call the voluntary pilot testing, and we've got 3 countries currently identified. We've got Mexico, Canada, and in this region we have Indonesia, which we're starting our conversations with as of this morning. So the idea is that we want to understand is that based on your data is only as good, or your statistic is only as good as the data you're getting. And I think that's already been referenced in the previous conversation. So what we want to do is develop statistical definitions, but we also recognise that actually a single statistical definition for a hazard is not the way forward. Because if you use a definition that's reliant on really good surveillance systems, majority of the world will not be able to get involved. So if we take the Sendai framework, for example, one of the indicators is around actually understanding mortality from disasters or mortality from hazards. Well, a lot of countries don't have death registration. So already we have an issue in terms of collecting that statistic. So we have to develop a statistic that enables us to understand the data, or the accurate data around those countries that do have death registrations, and what the proxy measurement is for those countries that don't have that data. And we end up that when countries then submit their data to Sendai Framework Monitor, they'll be able to select which calculation they used, and we'll have a better understanding of the true burden of a hazard. So the voluntary pilot testing, we've started with having sort of conversations. We're asking each country to identify at least 1 hazard, or up to 5, that are relevant for their region, and to actually understand where the good practice is, because we know some countries have good practices in place around statistics that they're already using, and where there are gaps and how those challenges could be addressed, because we suspect that actually the challenges are across all the countries, and so we want to identify all of those. And once we bring all that information together, we will have a report that outlines the benefits and challenges of developing statistical definitions using the Sendai framework. The third element is a literature review, and this is where I think colleagues on this call as well could be really helpful. So what we've done is we've done a literature search, but we recognise that the challenge with our literature search is it's very European focused, and that's just based on the fact that we were based in Europe and the search engines we used. So we are very keen to understand what literature exists in the Asia Pacific region around disaster-related statistics, what's working well, what reports have been produced. We want grey literature as well as published papers, so we have a much rounder view of what is going on. So on the next slide, just going to go into a bit more sort of focus around the research question. What is the question we're trying to answer through doing this pilot? Effectively, for the expert review, what we've asked our experts is, we know currently in the Sendai framework there are 7 targets. There are 4 that are related to mortality, finance, population affected, and infrastructure. What we want to understand is how effective are current data collection and collation systems, and how accurate are the figures for the global targets. So the systematic expert review on the next slide, just talk through sort of how we're doing that. So I've already sort of covered a lot of this. We've done a survey through what we call snowball methodology. We've asked people to forward it on to as many people as possible. We've sent you the link in the chat, and would really highly encourage you to complete it. We've had just under 100 responses so far across the world, but are really keen to get more opinions, so please do take the time to fill it in. Although the survey says it closes on the 23rd of January, it's actually still open. So please do to fill that in. And effectively, what we're asking our experts to do is to identify hazards that they think that they should review, and how and what the challenges are around those. On the next slide, we talk a bit more about the voluntary pilot testing and the research question that we're asking our volunteer countries. And what we're asking them is how do you capture the data for the first 4 global targets based on the hazards that they've chosen, and what challenges do they face? But actually, I don't just want to focus on challenges because it's good practice. We also want to know about the good practice as well. And the process we're going to use, I've just outlined very quickly on the next slide, is around actually to receive feedback and guiding questions. So we recognise that a lot of countries, the data that you use in order to collate the information for your statistic comes from different agencies. So we want to understand better, where does data sit, and how does that sort of affect your ability to then be able to produce the correct statistic, and where the accuracy is and where the data gaps are. So on the next slide, yeah, so just I wanted to talk about the governance structure so you understand how we link in with the systems that Rahul talked about earlier. So the task force, as I mentioned, myself, Michael Nagy and Daniel Clark sit on the task force project team. We have project officers from UK HSA, UK Health Security Agency, who are supporting the project, but we report directly into the interagency and expert group on disaster-related statistics that Rahul talked about earlier, and we provide them updates on the work that's happening. On the next slide, just want to quickly go through the timelines. So the timelines have shifted slightly, partly because unfortunately I got COVID last month and was off sick. So the timelines are probably out by a few weeks at the moment. But essentially what we have done is begun to identify experts. We've agreed which countries we would like to work with and have reached out to those countries. But we are also keen if there are other people who are saying we would like to also participate in the, if there are any other countries that want to participate in the pilot, we will be happy to hear from you as well. So we've been running sort of a series of online questionnaires. The team are currently analysing data, and we're sort of having the focus groups next month, and the reports will come from that. And the idea is that we want to aim towards the UNDRR global platform in May this year in Indonesia, so that we can present our initial findings, and hopefully that information could then feed into the work around the UN Statistical Commission framework. So on the next slide, this is, I think, the most important bit. How can you engage with us, and how can we engage with you? So I've talked about the pilot survey. We would really encourage you to fill it in. We would love to have your expert focus groups. The first ones are being hosted next week. We really want to hear about the practical on-the-ground experience that you have. And you are welcome to volunteer for country pilots as well. We are also looking for people to review the draft report when we produce it, and to give that expert opinion on whether or not you feel that this is something that's suitable or useful for the statistical community and for the disaster risk reduction community. And so if you are interested in actually being a report reviewer, when you fill in the pilot survey, you have the option to select the projects that you want to get involved in, or the parts of the project you want to help with, and we will then sort of be in contact with you. So on the next slide, and it's my final slide, we want to just talk about what are the benefits. Why should you be involved? And I think it's really important because you can influence the process. You are in a powerful position that you can engage your local stakeholders and get buy-in to the project. We want to use your expertise to help develop the statistical definitions. We could sit in a dark room and we could come up with the statistics and say, hey, this is what everybody should be doing, but they might not work for you. And that's why we need you on board. And actually, it's an opportunity to continue to contribute to the development of disaster-related statistics and disaster science field. And so we would absolutely love to have you on board. So that was everything that I wanted to cover sort of this morning, but happy to take any questions, ideas, anything that people want to ask about. And if anybody wants to have sort of a separate meeting because they want to go into more detail, my team and I would be happy to meet with you, and we can sort of talk about it in more detail. So thank you very much for your time, and thank you for inviting me to join you here. It's been an absolute honour to join you this morning, or this afternoon where you are.
Thank you very much, Kansa, for your excellent presentation. and for joining us very early in your time. Thank you, Fahad, as well, for joining us and being so active in posting all the links. I think you have really provided us a lot on what's the value, what's the benefits, what's the importance of this work, but also very concretely what are the different opportunities open for countries and for members of this group on participate at the minimum through the survey, but also on the specific focus groups, or even putting them forward as candidates for country pilots. And as you mentioned at the beginning, you're talking to the converts, but it's always good to remember, remind us and remember ourselves how important this work around the hazard classification is to make sure we have agreed definitions, but how important it is as well to see how these scientific and academic definitions can be translated into statistically helpful definitions that can help us improving the understanding. And as you well said, if we improve the understanding, we also have more insights on what policies to reduce and manage the risk. So with that, we'd like now to open up for any questions for Kansa and Fahad. Any comments, any clarifications, or any suggestions, or already if you want to volunteer yourself to participate in any of the, or being a reviewer of the draft report, or also if you think your government, your country, your institution will be interested also in becoming a country pilot. Thank you very much. So we have now a few minutes for questions. Please, anyone would like to come in, please let us know. And maybe while we warm up, maybe we can ask Fahad, could you tell us the upcoming focus group will be dedicated to which, the closest one that you have put the poll there? If you could perhaps tell us what is the next one that you have planned next week?
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to join today. I hope you can all hear me. My internet can be a little bit off sometimes. Regarding the focus groups, so we're very excited to start our focus groups next week. For colleagues who are interested and have time, we have 3 dates available on the Tuesday, the Wednesday, and the Thursday. We do appreciate that colleagues will be tuning in from kind of lots of different countries and time zones, so you're welcome to choose a time. We did try and keep timings such that individuals from different countries wouldn't be too put out and that they would be within their office hours. So if anyone has any time and would like to participate, our first 3 sessions are next week.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And thanks for considering the time difference and providing multiple opportunities. I think we have Sokol who would like to take the floor. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Arya, and thank you very much, Kansa, for that very extensive presentation. I was just curious if there has been a decision as to the structure of this classification. I know you had, I quickly scanned the sort of 8 categories, and then within that, there are a lot of subcategories. I think, as you know, from other statistical domains, having nested classification is quite helpful for aggregation purposes. And I see you shaking your head. It's something that you have thought about. Is this something that you're working towards, or is it very difficult to have sort of a nested classification in this space? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. And it is absolutely what we've been thinking about. I think it stems from the reason why we didn't have that to begin with is because it hadn't been considered at the time when the hazard information profiles were set up of using it for this purpose. So it was set up because we wanted to make sure that we had good definitions. Once that was set up, people were saying, well, actually, we could use it for statistical purposes. And then actually the feedback is then coming back, well, actually, we should have a nested approach. And the other feedback we've had is around the cascading hazards and linking those things together, because, if you have an earthquake, a death from an earthquake, well, actually, if the building collapses because of the earthquake, how do we sort of calculate all of those things? So it is one of the things that we are getting feedback on. And this is why we need sort of people like yourself involved, be able to explain how you feel that actually a nested approach would work and what that should look like. So the hazard information profile definitions, they're not fixed. The structure isn't fixed. So the way that, so I didn't go into too much detail, but the way that the list was created was there were a lot of sort of UN colleagues, academic, scientific, private sector colleagues, the insurance industry were involved. And what they did was they had a list of several thousand hazards, and they needed to kind of whittle them down to a manageable number, and they got down to 302. But we absolutely accept that it's not comprehensive, that there are some hazards that probably should be included that aren't there, and you can lobby to include those. It could be that actually that definitions need to be amended, so that actually we can produce better statistical definitions, or the structure might need to be amended in order to actually enable it to work on a practical level. And all of these are valid pieces of feedback that we are taking back to the working group, so that actually we can get a document that works for everybody, rather than just having sort of a fixed set. So that is feedback we're taking on board. It is, you know, you're not the first person to say that, but it's actually quite reassuring for me to hear other colleagues saying the same thing, because it means that actually there is a really important piece of feedback we can take back to amend as part of the 3-year plan.
Thank you very much, Kansa, for addressing that question and explaining how these are really not fixed in stone, but have, in a way, will be improved and will be amended, and even that there is options to consider what was not initially considered, despite the attempts to be as comprehensive as possible. I don't see any other hands, and I notice we are not doing very well with the time. So from my side, I would suggest first to thank you again and really appreciate your participation today, and passing over to our chair for the concluding part of the session. Thank you. Thank you, Kansa. Thank you, Fahad.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Iria, and then thank you, Kansa, and then Fahad for participating in our meeting so early. So as Iria said, that now we are close to the end of today's meeting, and I would like to thank our speakers and moderators for their excellent work. And let me quickly wrap up today's meeting. Firstly, we had the updates on e-learning platform and progress in the development of the internationally agreed standards on disaster-related statistics. And then it was followed by the presentation on the activities and accomplishments of the technical working group. And then, of course, we had a very good or hot discussion about the way forward in 2022. Also, we had a very rich presentation on the new Hazard Information Profiles, statistical review with some benefits and opportunities, mainly by Kansa and her colleague Fahad. And that was for today. Before closing the meeting, I would like to encourage our members, those who haven't done with the survey, please do it as soon as possible. Then we can have a really accurate and picture what we have done, and then what we need to do in 2022. And now I would like to ask our colleagues from ESCAP if there is any announcement or housekeeping things before closing the meeting. I don't see anyone, so if there are none, before I declare this meeting closed, I would like to let you know that our next meeting is scheduled on Wednesday, 13th of March, and we did some change in our meeting time. The next time, due to some other commitments, we schedule the meeting at 1 p.m. Bangkok time, 1 hour earlier than usual time, and hope it works, all of you. And with this, I would like to close the technical working group meeting for today. And thank you very much again for making the time and joining us today. Stay safe, and then see you next month. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye. Thank you.
Goodbye. Thank you, Ariana.
Thank you. Bye-bye.